President Ronald Reagan had both ardent supporters and detractors. One element of his style, though, that many agreed with was that he had great optimism for America and tried hard to make Americans proud of our nation. His confidence allowed him to accept all kinds of criticism, even the humorous kind, like at this 1985 inauguration party.
I know this is a Republican celebration, but I have the honor of introducing a man who is so democratic, he picks on everybody equally, even a little kid like me. Mr. Don Rickles. Be funny.
Good evening, Mr. President. Nice to see you, sir. And your lovely wife, Nancy. It's a big treat for me to fly all the way from California to be here for this kind of money. The Secret Service is walking around the lobby. Did you see the president? Anybody see the president? Where's the president? The president's with Nancy in the hall going, let's try it one more time. Remember when you were governor and you used to walk over to my table? Now you're big and you're getting on my nerves. I'll tell you this. Is he laughing? If you see Marines coming towards me, go into glory, glory, hallelujah.
Mr. Reagan knew that humor, a well-told story, could send a clear message in his speeches.
The story was an American and a Russian arguing about their two countries, and the American said, look, in my country I can walk into the Oval Office, I can pound the president's desk and say, Mr. President, I don't like the way you're running our country. And the Russian said, I can do that. The American said, you can? And he says, yes. I can go into the Kremlin to the General Secretary's office, pound his desk and say, Mr. General Secretary, I don't like the way President Reagan's running his country.
Debating Walter Mondale in 1984, Reagan did a very difficult thing. He made his opponent laugh at one of his good lines.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience.
In 1995, Russian President Boris Yeltsin came to the UN in New York to discuss the problems in Bosnia. President Clinton met with Yeltsin, and afterwards they declared the meeting a success, though Clinton made sure that reporters understood Yeltsin's comments belonged solely to the Russian president.
And if you looked at the press reports, one could see that what you were writing was that today's meeting with President Bill Clinton was going to be a disaster.
Так вот, не первый раз я вам говорю, что вы провалились.
Well, now for the first time I can tell you that you're a disaster.
Be sure you get the right attribution there.
Я надеюсь, что вы правильно все это поняли.
And one of the things I most admire about President Clinton, he's the only president I ever heard of that went back to his high school reunion. To me, that is very cool. To me, that is the only reason I would want to be president, just so I could go back to my high school reunion. Just to walk up to that snotty cheerleader and go, oh, still too busy for the leader of the free world? Hey, how's your husband's Amway franchise? How's that working out? See, that is very cool.
In 2006, President George W. Bush addressed the White House Correspondents' Dinner in Washington, D.C. Mr. Bush told the attendees at the press dinner that he was having his problems.
I'm glad to see everybody here is enjoying themselves. Don't think I haven't noticed all the drinking that's been going on. In my State of the Union address, I said we needed to increase the use of ethanol. Well, where should I start? A year ago, my approval rating was in the 30s. My nominee for the Supreme Court had just withdrawn, and my vice president had shot someone. Ah, those were the good old days.
Too many OBGYNs aren't able to practice their love with women all across the country. See, I don't think you can be.
The left hand now knows what the right hand is doing.
Here I can't help but be reflective, a little sentimental. 8 years ago, I said it was time to change the tone of our politics. In hindsight, I clearly should have been more specific. Eight years ago, I was a young man, full of idealism and vigor. And look at me now. I am gray, grizzled. Hillary once questioned whether I'd be ready for a 3 a.m. phone call. Now I'm awake anyway because I got to go to the bathroom. I'm up.
And finally, a really nice moment at the White House in 2012, when the portraits of President George W. Bush and his wife Laura were unveiled.
We may have our differences politically, but the presidency transcends those differences.
Those differences disappeared today in the East Room of the White House as 3 of the 5 living presidents gathered to honor President George W. Bush.
George, I will always remember the gathering you hosted for all the living former presidents before I took office, your kind words of encouragement. Plus, you also left me a really good TV sports package.
The unveiling of the portraits was a proud moment for the Bush family. President Bush joked that the exclusive portrait collection now starts and ends with a George W., referencing himself and George Washington.
When the British burned the White House in 1814, Dolly Madison famously saved this portrait of the first George W. Now, Michelle, if anything happens, there's your man.
Mrs. Obama told him not to worry.
And I promise you, I promise, I'm going straight for